Hello, and welcome to my first vlog in practical techniques in strength and conditioning on skill versus capacity in the weight room. During this vlog, I will be discussing the relationship on the back squat and the hang power clean. A skill can be defined as a global representation in the body's neuromuscular system which allows us to complete tasks effectively. Athletes achieve skill-based outcomes by practicing to facilitate and develop skills. This is often completed by rep-based practice as a strong attractor state can be discovered. A capacity is structures and functions that influence the way the body delivers movements. Capacities are utilised by skills and affects how the body functions. Firstly, I'm going to introduce you to Anna, who has a skill issue when performing the back squat as she is relatively a beginner. Here we see Anna completing the back squat with the bar, and we can see there's very clearly a problem with a great forward trunk lean. Alongside this, her heels elevate off the floor, resulting in the weight travelling towards the front of the foot. When completing the squat correctly, the weight should be distributed to the rear of the foot, which helps keep balance. As we see in this video, the bar path does not travel to the midline of the foot, which is where it should align with when completing the correct movement pathway, by keeping the chest nice and tall. As well as the anterior trunk lean, the knees do not quite reach over the toes during the descent. To ensure that this is a skill issue in comparison to a capacity issue, Anna completed the knee to wall test. Examples of this are shown here with Anna on the right and our next athlete Rory on the left. This test is beneficial for measuring ankle dorsiflexion as it is simple and reliable if carried out correctly. The test is completed by having the toes as far away from the wall as possible, the knees staying in contact with the wall, and we want to keep that back heel on the ground. A good score for this test is about 5 inches or above, and as we can see, Anna got 6, and Rory did not get as much as that. For Anna to improve this skill, I gave her some coaching cues to think about those main problem areas in the squat pattern. As you can see, it's still not perfect, as the bar path is not fully aligned with her midfoot. The knees are slightly over the toes but could go further, however, the heels are glued to the floor. This highlights an area of improvement. As a coach, next time I would regress Anna even further by just beginning with bodyweight squats. Here we have Rory, who has a capacity issue when completing the back squat. Beginning with Rory's bodyweight back squat, we can see he has understanding of the technical model, however is limited in his ankle mobility as highlighted earlier in the knee to wall test. Ankle mobility affects Rory's ability to gain correct depth when squatting, as below parallel is desired. In the bodyweight squats, we see 90 degrees being reached. However, when completing a loaded squat, the depth decreases to 112 degrees. A second impact ankle mobility is having on Rory's squat is that the knees are not going over the toes when descending. This is due to compensatory anterior trunk lean, as the ankles do not allow for full range of motion. In this clip, the red line highlights the correct movement pattern when descending in a squat, as the knees should be over the toes. The blue line shows that ankle dorsiflexion is a limiting factor in Rory's squat, as he is having difficulty driving his knees over his toes. As mentioned previously, the knee to wall test was carried out to test Rory's ankle dorsiflexion, which highlighted the issue. To improve this ankle mobility, a forward leaning lunge on a plate was carried out to stretch and loosen off the gastrocnemius and the soleus, the Achilles tendon and the tibialis posterior. Once stretching was carried out to increase ankle dorsiflexion, a common solution to improve this is elevating an athlete's heel in the form of a wedge or weightlifting shoes, as this decreases the compensatory elements in the squat pattern. Here we see the first improvement in Rory's squat technique, as his depth has improved and is below parallel. This is due to no longer compensating and completing the movement pattern correctly. Secondly, in this clip, we see Rory's knee drive over his toe, completing the correct movement pattern once again. These improvements show that ankle dorsiflexion was his limiting capacity. When squatting, it is important to highlight when anterior trunk lean is being used, as it can increase injury risk due to causing unnecessary force to the lumbar spine. Similar issues arose in Anna and Rory, However, it is essential to investigate if it is a skill or capacity issue. Once Anna's skill has improved, we can then focus on her force production. However, for Rudy, it is essential to ensure we do not focus on his force production until we fix the capacities. When compensating, different muscle groups are engaged, and when there's an increased anterior trunk lean, the squat will be a more hip dominant movement. Here we have Lexi. She has a skill issue when completing a power clean, as she's very new to this exercise. You can see here she's swinging the bar away from her body and is struggling to get her elbows through in the turnover to the catch phase. She also does not triple extend, which reduces her ability to produce power. Here you can see the bar angle is a curve, and when we're cleaning, we don't want to see a curve. We want to see a straight line and pull our body underneath our elbows. In this front view, you can see that Lexi is struggling to punch the elbows through. To ensure that this is not a capacity issue, the broomstick shoulder mobility test was carried out. Lexi shows excellent shoulder flexion as her elbows are fully extended and has minimal lumbar compensation as her shoulders achieve 180 degrees flexion. She also has shown that she's completed the test correctly as her back is touching the wall. This highlights that it is not a capacity issue for Lexi. To improve driving the elbows through, I picked a drill focused on only elbow movement as it allowed Lexi to focus on the upper body component, removing the lower body stuff. Squeezing her scaps and driving her elbows through like smashing a pane of glass. This allowed her to focus on that elbow drive. Once I was happy with Lexi's turnover and the height she was bringing her elbows up to, I coached in a similar manner to Anna by giving cues on triple extension and driving the shoulders through. This made sure she also kept the bar close and pulling it under her. Our final athlete is Jess, who has a capacity issue in her shoulder mobility. This is highlighted in Jess's high power clean as she struggles to bring the elbows up parallel with her collarbone. This puts a lot of pressure through her wrists, resulting in pain. As shoulder mobility was an issue, I completed the broomstick test on Jess to ensure that the shoulder flexion was the issue. Here we see Jess's flexion of the shoulders was poor, as she only reached 133 degrees of shoulder flexion, and 180 is desired. This backs up Jess's issue was a capacity issue, not a skill issue, which can be due to tight lat muscles. To decrease tension in the lats and thoracic spine, I got Jess to foam roll these areas, focusing on rolling slowly and with intent to ensure she spent time on the lats, which will allow her shoulder extension to increase. To improve the muscles range of motion in the lats, scaps and thoracic spine, I added YTW exercises in before Jess completed the cleans again, as this activates the traps and the rhomboids, as well as it mobilises the thoracic spine and scaps, which are key muscle groups for the hang power clean. Here we see Jess complete cleans with an increased movement pattern, as the elbows are forcefully driven up and stay parallel with the collarbone. This highlighted that Jess had a stiffness in the lats, which impacted her ability to fully extend the shoulders. And here we see the red line with a much more improved angle. Once again, skill and capacity issues can present themselves as similar, however, they are very different. This is why it is key for practitioners to investigate them. Highlighting capacity issues early allows athletes to have benefits on strength training as it impacts their practical sport training, improving their performance. Athletes will always require a balance of skill and capacity to allow for optimum movement pathways.